Recognize the representative from Texas, Ms. Johnson.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. And to our panelists, thank you all so much for being here today. I want to echo my colleagues and our witnesses' comments that NATO's very existence has averted world wars and made the United States safer. Let me be clear, it's not a waste of resources when we come together as allies to defend one another, as implied by some other members of this committee. The security and prosperity that we have enjoyed since world wars is no accident. Out of the fog of war, the United States helped found this now 80-year-old alliance that guaranteed under Article 5 that should any NATO nation come under attack, the other members will consider it as an attack against members all and will take all actions it deems necessary to assist. Article 5 has been invoked once in NATO's history, and that was on September 12, 2001, one day after al-Qaeda killed almost 3,000 people here in our homeland. In the following years, our NATO allies came to our aid, and 1,000 troops died in combat alongside Americans. But now we have a president who questions the same security assistance we relied on to keep our own nation safe. Just a few weeks ago, he said in the Oval Office, "You know the biggest problem I have with NATO? If the United States was in trouble and we called them, do you think they're going to come and protect us? They're supposed to. I'm not so sure." I find these comments incredibly reckless and irresponsible and dangerous to our national security in light of the one time when NATO's been activated, it was in our defense. Ambassador Smith, how does this suggestion that NATO allies will not defend each other impact our adversaries' perception of credible deterrence, and does this undermine our own security?
Well, thank you, Representative. When the war in Ukraine started, I think both President Xi in China and President Putin in Russia made an assumption, and that was that the NATO allies would grow weary, that they'd grow impatient, that they'd grow distracted, and they wouldn't be able to maintain focus on Ukraine. But we have maintained focus on Ukraine. We remain united. I'm worried that won't continue to be the case. I want to see continued U.S. leadership, which is critical to alliance unity. And while the Europeans are increasing their defense budgets, it makes perfect sense to remain committed to this alliance. It serves our interests in addition to the interests of our allies. So I firmly believe that the U.S. should maintain its commitment to this alliance, and that doing so will send a very strong signal, not just to Moscow, but to China, Iran, North Korea, and other countries around the world.
And it seems to me like the administration is sort of doing the hokey pokey. We're in one day, we're out one day, we're in one day, and we're turning it all about. And that is not the way to have sustained, reliable, persuasive foreign policy, in my opinion. Do you agree?
Yes, Representative, I will tell you that the day that the Trump administration suddenly, without consultation with any of our allies, flipped off and turned off intelligence sharing to Ukraine and all military assistance, it was eventually turned back on. But that day sent a chill through our European allies, our friends in Canada, who were worried that this now signals a new era where at any moment the U.S. can have a sudden shift without any close coordination or cooperation with them.
The president just sent over a rescission bill that will remove funding, critical funding for the UN. I'm curious as to how this panel feels about the U.S. decreasing its financial commitment to the UN and what that would do to our national security interests. Yes.
Thank you very much for the question. And now I fully support efforts to reduce funding for the United Nations, because the United Nations is riddled with corruption and inefficiency and frequently acts against U.S. national interests. And I think that the Trump presidency is pushing for greater accountability from the United Nations, and that is absolutely right.
Admiral, how do you feel about that?
So I'm uncomfortable with the rescission bill with the UN, but more so with the reduction in USAID funding for, particularly I studied the cyber capability and capacity building that we've been doing in Eastern Europe and in the Balkans. And I think the cutting of that funding, the reduction in that funding will make it'll make it much more difficult for U.S. forces to operate, to move in and through these countries as we like to do with our forces. So we have to be very careful with these reductions and our overseas assistance. If they have a legitimate national security value, they should be maintained. And when you eliminate 100% of everything, I tend to think you really didn't do a legitimate review.
I couldn't agree with you more. Thank you all so much for your testimony. I'm out of time and I yield back.